Okay, we're holding in Kuntres U'Maayan, the second shiur that we're giving on page 31 in the Overcoming Folly edition, or if you're using a regular text, Hebrew or English, it's Perek Beis, chapter 2 of Maimer Aleph, the first Maimer. Let's read the Kitzer just to refresh our memory of what we learned yesterday. Shitim Sharsha Shita. The Maimer begins with a pasuk in Yoel, which says, U'Maayan mebeis Hashem yotzel hishkin nachal shitim. So the word shitim isn't only a locale, and as Avi very nicely showed us a possibility of where it is, and really thankful to you for that. So shitim sharsha shita. The word shitim, it's a root. Shirish is shita. What does shita mean? Uvoshnei pirushim. There are two meanings. Aleph hatoya. One, it means to go astray. Beis shtus, it means folly, stupidity. Hatainu gam bedvarim hamutorim. Then the Rebbe said, this is the Rebbe Rashab. Rashab said that having pleasure from things that are even permissible to you, hu avor al darchei haTorah. It's a desecration of the ways of Torah, because he brings the Sefer HaChinuch, who interprets the pasuk Kadeshim Tiyu to be to refer to Dvarim HaMutarim, as the Ramban says. He doesn't quote here the Ramban, but it's the Ramban over there on the pasuk if you want to check it out. And the Sefer HaChinuch enumerates it as one of the 630 mitzvahs. And so too the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, chapter 30, supports this opinion. And obviously the Rebbe Rashab, being a great-great-grandson, follows in his opinion. And that's why he says here, Hu avor al darchei haTorah, it is mamish, a desecration of the ways of Torah. Where does it come from? To indulge, to come to this indulgence, Haba mesibas ha-yetzer hara, it comes from the yetzer hara, shemates ha'adam, who makes man go astray, miderech ha'emes, from the way of truth. If a gamoila, and once he gets you to do that, he goes up to heaven, umekatrik, and he prosecutes v'hu ha-satan, and that's why we call the yetzer hara with the name Satan. If you were wondering, why does the yetzer hara Yonason have two names, yetzer hara and Satan? So what does the word Satan mean? So one of the meanings of the word Satan is to prosecute, to stiyah also means to speak, to prosecute against you. He goes and gets you to do an aveda, and then he takes that to heaven and he says, you see? So that's why we call the yetzer hara Yoni not only yetzer hara, but the activity that the yetzer hara accomplishes, i.e., snitching on the person to heaven, is that snitching and prosecution is classified with the name Satan. Perek Beis. Says the Rebbe, ve'emes u'shtus neira. The truth is, this indulgence that man indulges in, it is utter stupidity. I mean, you don't usually find such direct language in Chassidus Chabad, in any Chassidus, but in Chabad as well, in particular. It's Chochma Bina Das, and where does it come to use the word utter stupidity, which is the English translation of shtus neira. And why is it such a shtus? The next words we read with a question. V'chizeu ha'toiv, is this the good? Asher elav yimshech ha'adam, to which man should be drawn after, bechir ha'nevroim, the choicest of creatures. Man is the choicest, the best of all creatures that Hashem made. And this best gravitates to shtus. Hence, this is utter stupidity. It's like someone who has everything and then wastes it on all kinds of stupidity. Later in Maimer 15, you look at on the English side, note 18, he references that a note later in Maimer 15, chapters 1 and 2, the Rebbe Rashab will explain this term that man is Pchir HaNevroyim. So that will be an interesting discussion. But as far as what we're concerned over here, this is his argument. If he wasn't Pchir HaNevroyim, if he was just an ordinary fellow, one amongst more creatures, big deal. Big deal. People go. But when you are Pchir HaNevroyim, you're the choicest, you're the best, you're excellence, and you act so foolish and stupid, this makes no sense. Kihine yesh kama mina tainukim. And the Rebbe is going to list for us 4 or 5 different types of pleasures. Let's listen. Take, for example, a pleasure from a delicious, sweet, and good food, l'cheich, to the cheek, the palate. Shezeu tainug hayoser shaful upachos. This is the lowest type of tainug. U'kamay b'derech klal. Ha-tainug binyonim gashmiyim. This also includes all pleasures of gashmiyas, the gufnim, bodily needs. Shezeu tainug bahami mamish. We call that a tainug bahami, an animal-like tainug. An animal loves to soak itself either in dirt or in water, right? Look, it gets pleasure from that. Well, when we have a good hot bath and we need, and it's not for our health, but just to say, it's a machaya. It's a machaya. Instead of going and helping someone in a nursing home, you're saying it's a machaya. You know why? It feels good. Well, no problem. But you're like a behemoth. A behemoth feels good also. And so every type of tainug, of gufnius, of body, if it's bereft of spirituality, it's tainug bahami. Let's continue. An animal is drawn after good things, v'arevim, sweet things, lefitiva, based on its instinct, its nature. And it knows no other good. Only this good and sweet thing. And it's drawn after this. Okay. Finished. We finished now with Tainug number 1. If you're making notes, this paragraph is Tainug 1, which is we call it Tainug Gufni and Tainug Bahami. Number 2, Ulamayla Mizeh, a tainug that is a little more elevated, sophisticated, and above this, who can moy ha-tainug b'kol orev, pleasant music, pleasant sound, shehu tainug ruchni yoser. This is tainug ruchni yoser, more spiritual. It's interesting that Moshe Myers just came on at this moment when the Rebbe Rashab addressed something that he loves to do, which is play music. So the Rebbe Rashab, right here, you came on right when I'm finished, when we just read the second line. Absolutely. But what does he say about it, Moshe? Now get ready. He says, although it's not a tainug bahami, it's not an animal coarse pleasure, but it's still a bodily pleasure. Music is still in the realm of gashmi, of physical and of physical. So yes, it's not as coarse as gashmi, but it's still gashmi. And that's all he says about it. One second. Moshe, let me finish more of the paragraph, and Belineda will get back to you. I got to cover some ground. It's important. So here finishes, guys. Here finishes the second tainuk. He doesn't say more about it, so just to speculate and to philosophize is not the time right now. Let's go now to tainuk number 3. Third type of pleasure that the Rashab identifies. And you see that one is more refined than the other. So music, Yonason, is more of a refined tainuk than eating and sleeping and all the other gashmis. Number 3. Moshe, please turn off your mute. A third tainug, which is even more sophisticated and refined, is pleasure that we get from character, midos, of being a mensch, helping someone. Now he's going to spend some time explaining this, and pay attention to the nuance of how he spins it, okay? I'm sorry to use those words, but, I think we know it's good to the way we understand it better if I said those words. Take goodness and kindness. When one does with someone else. The person who by nature is a good guy, a good man, a good person, he gets tremendous tainug nifla, wondrous tainug, pleasure from being able to do a favor, of a chesed for someone else. Now, this is still within the third tainug. The Rebbe says now, within doing good for others, there are nuances. Let's see what he says. There are also levels, nuances. If the doing of good, if his doing good, is only coming because by nature he is kind, without the involvement of logic. Next page 33. In other words, why am I doing it? Because it feels good, Yoni. I'm not thinking about it's right, it's wrong. I get a high from doing a chesed to someone else. Let's continue. He does good and kindness with anyone that he meets. Without discerning whether he meets a drug addict or he meets someone who doesn't have to pay rent. He gives them both money. And it makes him feel good to help people. And he has no kavana pnimit. He has no inner focus and intent when doing good. With this person, says the Rashab, this type of pleasure, who gam came to hainuk bahami. The Rabbi Rashab says, I'm going to put that into the first category of an animalistic tainuk, who is gabrus ho'ava tivi. Very interesting. Because what's going on is, there is the overpowering hit gabrut, from the word gibor, of ha'ava tivi, is the natural love. In other words, this is such a deep point and important. What's natural to a person doesn't mean that it's holy. And it doesn't mean that it's spiritual. It can be bahami, it can be animalistic. But it's that passion and gevura that's in your character that says, I'm going to do good regardless, because I love doing good. Maybe what you're doing good is hurtful to the person or to others. I don't care, because it's about me. Oh, it's about you. As soon as you say it's about me, that's nefesh habamis. That's yetzer hara. That's the tainuk gufni, the lowest type of tainuk. As it's known that an animal, its primary drive, who bebchinas hamidas levad, is only with instinct. Ve'ein lo das klal, it doesn't have any das. We mean that its das is totally subordinate to its midos. So in order to justify its midos, it has some das. But when he says it has no das at all, it means it doesn't have the human das that we talk about, the human mind. V'kasher ha'odam misnayig u'misaneg. When a person conducts himself and pleasures and receives pleasure through his midos, his character activity, without the discernment of logic, harihu kabehema. Wow, he's like an animal. Could you imagine someone writing a big check, someone walking miles? And you say he's like a behemoth. Why? Because he doesn't discern. It's just all about him and makes him feel good because he has a teva of tov. Now, by the way, the Rebbe is not saying here that he's doing evil. I mean, I don't want The point is he helping someone? He's helping someone. But as far as the person's concerned, this is still a tainug bahami. We're talking here about, I want to make it clear, Yoni, we're talking here about a human being, a person. And we say he has three different kinds of tainug. It's he. So we're saying that this type of pleasure and this type of goodness that is natural for the person is the tainug bahami within the person. Let me take your question in a few minutes also. He's like an animal, ki'im, rather. So what should be? So how should my midos, how should my character and behavior be structured? Says the Rebbe, I'll tell you how. Ki'im kol midas bnei adam. All human traits and character tzarech liyas needs to be al pi seichel, dictated by logic. Chabad, chapters 12 and 17 in Tanya, moach shalit ala leiv, mind over matter. That is man. That is a healthy midah. Because then there will be times where you will not give, even though you won't, from the perspective of chesed, you won't give because you'll say it's not healthy. Now we're not talking about rachamim. Rachmanis is a different notion. In other words, Rachmanis is, and I'd say it now, even though he doesn't talk about it, just to make it clear to you. Rachmanis means even though the person doesn't deserve, I'm going to help them anyway. But that's coming from the midas harachamim. We're not talking about midas harachamim, the attribute of mercy, of compassion. We're talking about chesed. Chesed needs to be dictated by logic. And if it's not healthy chesed. It's an addicted chesed. Or in better English words, it's about yourself. And anything about yourself is not genuinely about the other person. Now, as far as, let's say, tzedakah, the Gemara says, the bottom line is, the poor person who needs help, got the money, whether you're genuine or not, as far as the person's concerned, it makes no difference. He needs the help. But in the Maimer here, we're not analyzing the other person who gets the help. From his perspective, he's right. I need the help. The fact that you're messed up and you're thinking that it's about you, that's your issue. And that's what the Maimer's talking about. The Maimer's talking about us, not about the result of what we do, but about what we do. Is it mind over matter, or is it free love and giving without discernment, which can be and lead to a big problem? Okay, Moshe Myers and then Yoni, briefly, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Just regarding what you said when I came on about music, I hear what you're saying. It's a more coarse pleasure or activity than, let's say, eating and so on. No, just the opposite. It's a more refined. I got it wrong. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. It's less coarse. It's a higher level, right?
Yes.
Okay? But yet you said it's still from the behemoths, like it's still from our physical goof.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the thing is, I always understood, Ralph, that music is one of the few things, along with Torah and other mitzvahs, that exists in Olam Haba because we learn the Malachim sing. So maybe it's the kind of music we're talking about, but as Ruchnias, but music exists in Olam Haba. So then, how does that work out? Because it sounds good.
Okay.
It's not so good. It's Ruchnias.
I'm going to tell you a story that's a very sharp story, and I would have not told it to you, but it just came to me now. And it's not going to, I don't want you to take it as an insult to Reb Shlomo. I want you to hear the point. Okay? I heard this from someone who was getting married in 1967. I heard it from him himself.
Okay.
So he wanted to have the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya's niggin, that we sing at weddings. Ya 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 ya. It's called the 4-stanza song, niggin. It's called the Balatanya song.
Right.
Even though he wasn't a full-fledged Lubavitcher, but he had respect, and he felt that this was an awesome niggin for him to walk to be under the chuppah with his kala. Okay? His kala was from a very rabbinic Litvak home, and she didn't go for it. She said she never heard of it. It sounds very morbid. Like, what are you hacking me? And this was 67, and you know that Reb Shlomo's nigunim were becoming popular. It was really taking off, and people heard about his house of love and prayer, everything else. So she said she wants a Karlbach tune. So he, the chassan, had yechidus with the Rebbe, with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, 1967.
Yeah.
And he presented the Rebbe with the dilemma. And he wanted the Rebbe's opinion. This is what the Rebbe said. And it's so profound and deep, and it's not, in my opinion, an insult to Reb Shlomo or anyone else. The Rebbe said, I don't. Oh, one more thing. He didn't tell the Rebbe that his kala wanted one of Shlomo's nigunim. He didn't say that. She wants another tune. So the Rebbe didn't even know it's Shlomo versus the Alter Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, if you want the tune of the other person to lead you to the chuppah, you should sing that tune. Because it's the energy of the music that sets the tone for the chuppah. And if you want the Balatanya to be at the chuppah, you sing his song. What do I see from this story? This is the story. The story ends here, okay? He told me the story. Most people don't know about this. Is like a new story for people, but he told me the story. What do we see? To me, we see that music is so deep in the neshama, so deep in the soul, that it's an expression of soul, like you say on one hand, but on the other hand, it comes through the filter of a mouth, a mind, and a heart. And if the filter of the mind and the heart is whoever it is, that's what you're getting. And this is a very important point when we talk about music, what music to listen to. I'm talking about within Jewish music, non-Jewish music, not kosher music, and not even discussing. But within kosher music, you have to ask yourself a question. It's so important for the children and grandchildren.
Are you ready or no?
Excuse me. The issue is, with what am I relating? So I'm relating to music, like you said, it's more refined. It's true, it's more refined. But it goes through a mind, a heart, a mouth. Those are the filters, the instruments. And if the person or people represent a certain philosophy, that's what you're getting. So everyone has to decide what they want their chuppah to access. That's all. So that's my answer to your question. Of course, music is of spiritual nature. But nevertheless, let's not kid ourselves, Moshe. It goes through a mind and a heart of a composer, of a singer, of a player, and that's why they have to be Yirei Shemayim. And when they're Yirei Shemayim, then their compositions and their tunes are very, very deep. That's all. And it's like classical Chabad music. I'm talking about old-time Dveikus Nigunim of Chabad, meditative songs, which to many sounds very boring and depressing. Okay, I'll use the word depressing. To me, I get a high from this music because I try to find the soul within the music of the person, and I know the type of people who composed that music, who would daven for 4 or 5 hours with crying tears, and they didn't have what to eat, and they still davened and they prayed to Hashem and they composed music coming from. So to me, that is a holy niggin. It's a real holy niggin. You know, it reminds me, this is a little foolish, but a point. In Los Angeles, when we lived in Los Angeles, a woman was at our house, and she had just left the Kabbalah Center. You heard of the Kabbalah centers all over. So I asked her, do you have kosher mezuzahs? So she said, yes. So I said, where did you get them? She got them at the Kabbalah Center. I said, did you ask to find out who the sofer was who wrote the mezuzahs? She said, yeah, the sofer actually told me he wrote the mezuzahs while he had his feet in water to function as a mikveh. Do you understand? It's a question for Ashkenazim to be barefoot. According to the Balatanya, you're not supposed to be barefoot during prayer. Okay, here you're not praying, you're writing a mezuzah. If you're a Sephardi, it's something else. But I'm just saying, like, you know, what mishagas is this? Putting your feet in a basin of water to function as a mikveh. I mean, get your heads checked out. I mean, like, you know, what I'm saying is that people can be suffering, people can be composers. I don't want to go into it, but I know people that used to write Torah and listen to non-Jewish music at the same time. Would you read Torah written by someone while non-Jewish music was playing in the background? I wouldn't. But you'll say, what does one have to do with the other? What do you mean, what does one have to do with the other? Here is a piece of Torah, which is ruchnis and holiness, and where is it coming from? With a guy getting excited as he's writing. He needs mental energy. So what does he listen to? Goyish music. Come on. So, you know, we have to understand. So we have to that these things do happen. Okay, Yoni, and then we have to go. Yoni.
Yeah. So this a very beautiful story. That was a really great story. But there's actually one thing. I wasn't going to say this because I didn't know you were going to talk about this. But they say Rav Shlomo Kalbach, he never listened to non-Jewish music, and he wouldn't agree to play with somebody that listened to non-Jewish music because he said it would ruin the whole orchestra, the whole nagina.
Right.
That wasn't
right.
That's one of the things. But Rebbe, what I wanted to ask you is when we're talking about the third tainug, this tainug where the person thinks he's doing a mitzvah, he thinks he's doing a ruchnius thing, meaning he's fooling himself. He's doing a mitzvah, but he's not doing l'shem shemayim.
Right. He's doing it for himself. Right.
He's doing it for himself. So what comes to mind, I have a lot of friends in America and in Israel, they're both in Hatzalah, is that, you know, some people, they do it, you know, some people have good intentions, some people do it for the rush. There's like a rush when they get that call on Shabbos in the middle of the night, in the morning, they're in shul, and it's like an addictive rush, and not necessarily, you know, 100% they're doing it for the mitzvah. They're doing it for that rush where they, you know, get the beeper and they get the phone and boom.
Right. Like I said earlier, you got to save the life. Hatzalah. The bottom line. That's what. If you told me which is better, not to do it or to do it, the answer is to do it, because the guy needs the help. But here, when we learn a Maimach Siddur, this is where you got to look into yourself and refine yourself. So the answer, Yoni, is continue doing it, not to stop doing it, but just know that it's much more than the rush, and with the Eibusher's help, the person will get there. Because there's another issue, a mitzvah schleps a person into a good place. One day and a second day, and you'll see, and we've seen this, you can look on, I remember listening to a composer for all the singers, he's now in his 60s or 70s, you guys know who he is, and he has a video, and I was listening to him, and you know, I remember this guy 40 years ago with Mordechai Ben David, you know, in Brooklyn College in 1975, and if you saw what I saw, you would vomit, okay? I don't want to go into it. Girls and boys and swinging. I mean, it was like it was like so prost. It was so prost, you know? And here he is, 40 years later, he's speaking like that he learns Daf HaYomi every day. And you know what I'm saying? And he's a chassid. And I see that, okay, people change. The mitzvah schleps them in. But of course, it's good to start earlier so you don't have to wait 40 years and cause issues for 40 years. You don't want to wake up when you're 70 years old and say, "Oi, I made a mistake and I want to change my ways." So that's why we learn a maimer like this, and we look at the chesed that we do, whether it be Hatzalah, and everyone does chesed. So, of course, the bottom line is the person needs the help. But from your own perspective, we should refine that. Everyone have a great day. I think we had a great cheer. We'll learn tomorrow more. Sei gesund. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you so very much. Good to see you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.